You keep deceiving yourself about who someone else truly is, even after all the evidence is clear. Losing your illusions is far more painful than losing any person. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, who mapped the architecture of the unconscious mind. Still, the wreckage of these broken illusions cuts deep, leaving a sting that lingers longer than absence. It isn't just that someone you trusted fails your expectations. It's that you've been living half asleep, projecting hopes and needs, inventing a version of another that comforts you in the dark. Deep down, some small voice recognizes this daily fiction and quivers at its unraveling. In memories, dreams, reflections, he circles this unraveling directly. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside awakes. That awakening can feel like walking through fire. Self-protective fantasies dissolve, and what remains is raw and undeniably real. You realize you weren't only protecting yourself from their jagged truths, you were safeguarding a piece of your own identity, stitched tightly to their image. Every false reassurance now rings hollow. The cost, not only the relationship, but the parts of yourself you hid in their shadow. It's tempting to blame only the other. The real treachery, though, lives within your own mind. You recoil from what you must now confront, the part of you that needs to believe. Here's the unspoken terror. If your judgment about them was faulty, what else can't you trust inside yourself? That doubt creeps into your daily choices, poisoning certainty. By doubling down on hope, long after the facts are clear, you keep an unstable shelter upright, terrified of the roof caving in. Some relationships seem easier sustained by illusion than re-examined in the light. Attachment, shame, and fear intermingle. Each supports the next, and the loop tightens. In Modern Man in Search of a Soul, this thinker warns what can happen when our boundaries and identities collide. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. No mix is ever neutral. Each meeting is transformative, and the real complication is this. When you refuse to let go of your illusion of another, you're also refusing your own evolution. The relationship that once defined you now limits you, holding you hostage to outdated stories. This is loss multiplied, not just of the other, but the possibility of becoming someone more honest, more self-aware. You sense the slow erosion of agency. Every day you refuse the truth, you dull your ability to trust your gut. Years go missing. Your reality warps around the stories you refuse to let die. There's a private cost rarely admitted. Self-respect thins. Your intuition, once sharp, grows dull from constant override. You find yourself defending them, not to others, but to yourself, in circular arguments that end only in exhaustion. Opportunities for real connection with others slip past unnoticed because you're still chasing the phantom of the person you hoped they'd be. What began as self-preservation calcifies into quiet self-betrayal. Even surrounded by friends, you feel a persistent loneliness. This is what's lost, the peace of clear sight, the freedom of living in tune with what is rather than what you wish could be. But the mind has a ferocious talent for distortion. No sooner do you spot a flash of truth, there's a reflex. You shove it down, then decorate the lie. Maybe you tell yourself it's just a phase, a rough patch, a misunderstanding. Each time you do, you tighten the knot between reality and the story you want. Holding on feels like love, but it's closer to fear wearing love's clothes. Your stomach knots at every small disappointment, but you ignore it for months. Eventually, numbness replaces anxiety, and you call this equilibrium. Denial quietly rewires your instincts, converting warning signals into background noise. The price of clinging to a fantasy is that you begin to doubt your own senses. You become a stranger to your own impulses, translating every emotion into the language of hope. It is easy to underestimate how much energy it takes to keep damming up your own awareness. You burn through your reserves just maintaining the fiction. If you stopped even a moment to ask, "What do I actually feel here?" the whole edifice might crack. Some nights, you sense the cracks running through your explanations. Your mind races to patch them. It's astonishing how quickly you can invent reasons, offer excuses, rehearse their side so thoroughly you begin to forget your own. You tell yourself that enduring is virtuous, that giving up would make you heartless or shallow. This strange loyalty to a version of someone, no matter the cost, becomes its own form of identity. If you break free, you fear you'll lose more than them. You might lose the person you were trying to be. That's the trap. You construct yourself around a relationship that no longer exists, and then refuse to demolish it, for fear there'll be nothing left inside the ruins. If you dare to sit in silence, the pulse of cognitive dissonance is undeniable. You sense in your bones that this misalignment cannot last forever. But there's comfort in persistence. To let go would feel like admitting defeat, and so the mind doubles down. In Psychological Types, he lays out the haunting refrain that won't leave you alone. What you resist persists. Every time you try to starve a feeling, it simply finds another way to surface. You soften the language, change the topic, indulge new distractions. But nothing dissolves. Energy just circles, tightens, and presses in from someplace deeper. Your longing for connection twists into anxiety, and then, quietly, into resentment. You aren't just protecting someone else's flaws anymore. You're defending a cage you built for yourself. It's astonishing how skillfully you can explain away your own suffering until you start to believe your own story. The turning point lands sharp. The more fiercely you protect the illusion, the more violently it protects itself from you. All at once, you see the cost. Every rationalization is like another lock snapped into place. With each denial, you reinforce the wall between your own soul and reality. You used to believe you were salvaging love. Now it feels like you're safeguarding your own exile. Loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It's the aftermath of betraying your own awareness, again and again, until it's harder to retrieve than forgiveness itself. You remember moments, years earlier, when you trusted yourself without waiting for permission. They stand in contrast, electric, bittersweet. You realize what vanished wasn't just a relationship, but the ability to move cleanly through your own life. You can't keep resisting without consequence. Neglected truths return as symptoms: irritability, restlessness, an erosion of kindness toward others and yourself. There is no sustainable numbness here, just the slow drift from who you are to who you tolerate being. Shattering the pattern is rarely theatrical. It starts quiet, almost accidental. Maybe you hear yourself repeat a familiar excuse, and this time, some internal lever catches. You taste the bitterness at the edge of dismissal. The body knows what the mind works so hard to deny. That filament of honesty, tiny and insistent, refuses to die beneath the rubble. When you let the reality stand, uncamouflaged, loss, grief, fear, all of it, something astonishing happens. Suddenly, the immense effort to resist slackens. It is draining, surrendering the fantasy. It is also the only act that brings rest. The illusion doesn't vanish in protest. It fades with indifference, the way fog dissolves under direct sun. In that clarity, there is no longer a need to rescue anyone. Not yourself, not the other. What remains is raw, uncarved, unfamiliar, but honest. Only from there is newness possible. The real shift arrives when the old reflex, fix, justify, polish, simply dies out. In civilization in transition, this truth is unavoidable. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That sentence is a hard key. Once you absorb it, you notice how judgment and blame often mask what you can't sit with inside. When you stop reaching to change the external, you're left staring into your own interior, painfully exposed. Stripped of projection, the room grows both smaller and more spacious. Old stories about guilt, shame, or deservingness become obvious as paper props. You feel the discomfort in your chest, avoidance with nowhere else to go. The first instinct is to run. But running is now impossible because honesty holds you fast by the collar. There's a humbling violence to it. The part of you still clinging to explanation gets quieter, then, finally, silent. The ground is different here, lumpy, unpredictable, but truly yours for the first time. Culturally, so much is built on the ability to keep masks in place. Children are lectured on decorum, lessons that grow into adult habits of second-guessing, suppression, and apology for every flicker of real emotion. Religions, politics, even therapy industries thrive on promises to fix what is broken, creating entire economies of self-doubt. To let any of this drop is to risk exile, or so the mind whispers. But that threat rarely materializes. Instead, a slow unlearning begins. The careful observer notices how the urge to rescue or rewrite another's experience is a way of soothing one's own anxiety. You believe if you could manage the world, your discomfort would subside. But the world is unmoved, and your heart beats on, exposed and unfinished. Inside the psyche, the refusal to see what is, your own limitations or vulnerabilities, comes from fear of annihilation. If you let sorrow or failure stand, the theory says you'll collapse. But every real moment lived proves the opposite. Allowing reality does not dissolve you. It roots you, dense and present, incapable of being hollowed out by fantasy's endless demands. What is lost by not changing? Only the persistent exhaustion of trying to live someone else's script. The cost is subtle, but immense. A life spent always improvising, never genuinely touching what's yours. Eventually, the absence of rescue brings its own quiet liberation. Look backward. How many years did you believe pain should be hidden, or joy dimmed for fear it would be taken? It's as if the ancient terrors are family heirlooms, passed down in secrecy. By allowing yourself to live honestly, you stop becoming your own jailer. That's when something else starts to settle in. a recognition that your brokenness is ordinary, not a catastrophic exception. That recognition is connective. It makes room for others, too, without the pressure to rescue or redeem. In collected papers on analytical psychology, the resolution sharpens into view. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. All the searching outward, every desperate plea for clarity or permission, dissolves here. You abandon the belief that answers lie in grand gestures or external validation. The only certainty is drawn from this honest confrontation with what's within. It is not comfortable. It is true. The gain is quiet but revolutionary. No longer a spectator, you become participant in your own becoming. There is a new steadiness in the willingness to face what hurts, what hungers, what hopes. It is the kind of clarity that does not isolate, but weaves you right back into the tangled fabric of others. No mask, no rescue. Only the life that's actually yours. From there, the closing question isn't what you ought to feel. It's whether you are willing to stay present for whatever comes next. True certainty arises from the honest confrontation with what lies within. Embracing this journey connects you deeply with others. If this resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and comment below. What are you choosing to confront in your life?